to. The changing weather patterns, I mean, going back to that Dookie College data, just showing, and look, that may flip totally back around the other way now, like it might have been in the 90s where it was, or the 80s where it was a lot wetter in the winter than it was over the summer. But I mean, I guess that's giving us the chance, if no matter what the weather patterns are doing, we've got opportunities there at various times of the year. I think I alluded to that one before, the moisture profile. You know, when are we actually likely to have a full profile of moisture to sow a crop in? You know, if you actually look at the data, we're probably more likely to have a full profile coming out of a winter into the summer than coming out of the summer into the winter. You know, what we talked about there, the cover crops over the summer, you know, is that moisture that we're using in the summer actually compensated by the extra moisture retention that we can save in the April-May period, because really that moisture that falls, say, from December to January, February, we lose a lot of that in evaporation. Whereas the moisture that we get in April or late March, April, we can conserve a lot more of that moisture under a stubble cover. The crop rotation diversity, I mean, that was the thing that sort of Dwayne Beck was on about, was the more crops and diversity of crops that you can have in rotation, the more robust it becomes in terms of handling diseases and insect pressures. I mean, resistant weed control is a good one because, I mean, going into a spring crop, you've got that option of it'll sit there over the winter, and you can, you know, 2 litres of CT is a lot cheaper than 2.5 litres a box of gold now trying to control resistant ryegrass if that's a problem you've got. So I guess for us, it's, you know, it's not really something that we're going to change our farm over in a big way, but we're still toying with how we'll manage it. But you know, we're thinking we might end up with perhaps, you know, we might end up with, say, 5% of the cropping rotation into a summer crop rotation. But that'll be a planned rotation that will be, say, coming out of a winter stubble, and then we might even just drill some vetch in February, March, grow that over the winter, and then spray that out, and then go into something like a sorghum, millet, sunflowers, whatever. I mean, like I think I said earlier on, the 2 that they found gave the best crop response, like wheat response, after the crops were sunflowers and millet. And that, you know, that sort of comes back to that carbon cycling and I guess the VAM association and all that. Actually, these are just the, I don't know why these ones came up and the other ones didn't. So this is virtually just crop progression. I sort of try to take photos about every 10 days of the crops. So that was the safflower, this is the sunflowers. So that one didn't pop up. So they're sown end of October. It's the mung beans. The mung beans are essentially, I don't know why some of these aren't showing up. Mung beans are what they use for your bean sprouts. So if you get stir fries or the bean sprouts in the supermarket, that's what they use the mung beans for, if they're high enough quality. And that's the lab, which is that summer legume. So that there's about, that's about, it ended up being about 6.5 tonne a hectare of dry matter. And that was actually, there's a few dairy farmers came to a couple of field days we had, and they're actually quite interested in that because they saw that as an option that they could sow with something like millet for high protein feed at the end of summer. They could either graze or cut for silage. So that's the presentation. Any questions?
Just wondering, David, with your millet, the GM correspondence that you're using today, what did you use to base it with the price? What did you use the price?
That was, I think I had.
Is that realistic, given what you're struggling to find market?
I think I had $400 a tonne.
It can be bust and boom around, Chef, in regards to the dairy guys buying and flat out.
Yeah,
They're not.
that's right. Yeah, well, I mean, most of mine probably won't be going into the Golden Valley. It's actually going out of the area. Where are we? 1165. Oh, we can soon work out 245. So that'll be 13, 14. No, I must have used about. I used whatever the price was at the time what I got quoted out of the market. So it might have been about $5.50 or something. Oh yeah, so that's 2 years ago. Yeah, last year it was only about. Yeah, last year was about a. Oh no, so it's the same year. Yeah, no, that was. Oh yeah, that was the white French. No, it'd be about $5.50 or something, I think. But yeah, look, it is one of those things that's got a big fluctuation. And we're actually not having trouble getting rid of it, but it's not something you can just. It's not a market like wheat. If you want to sell wheat today, you can sell it at a price. millet, you can't sell it if there's no market. There'll be a market, might be a market in a month's time, but you can't just walk into the market and say, I want to sell it today. Like, whether you drop your price $100 a tonne won't make any difference. If there's no demand for it at that point in time, you just can't sell it. So that's why you've got to be prepared to store it until the market's actually looking. Because it's a small volume, it's not like wheat or canola, it's not just being consumed all the time. Like, you know, when I started ringing around in probably May, they were saying, you know, come and talk to us in July, because they don't really start moving anything until sort of August, September. So
with the results you got, does that mean you sort of go steer away from Sunnies?
no, Sunnies is actually the one I'm pretty keen to pursue, actually.
Despite the bird problems?
Yeah, and look, to be honest, the only reason the birds were a problem is because it sat there for too long. If we'd harvested it when it should have been harvested, but at the time we were sowing and all that and trying to do everything else, it really wasn't a problem. Like when they were actually mature, ready to go, the bird problem over the maturing phase wasn't really a problem. It was only actually they sat in the paddock for too long that the birds actually said, shit, we'll get into them. Because when we actually first worked out what we're going to grow, we actually really thought hard about whether we'd even bother with sunflowers, because for that reason, like we had 3.5 hectares in a paddock, nothing around them, you know, like that. We just thought the birds were going to come in and crucify us. But we thought, well, look, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained, so we'll try it. But yeah, look, they got through pretty well without a lot of bird damage until I actually sat in the paddock, and then the birds sort of just progressively just worked their way into the plots.
What are your limitations going to be in your grain sorghum?
Moisture, I'd say. Hey?
Getting it off.
Yeah, well, and getting it off, yeah, be moisture, like, because it's a fairly hungry crop, and getting it off at the other end. Actually, I was talking to Brent Alexander, who was up at Lockhart a couple of days ago, and they put some grain sorghum in last year, about, I think, the last week of October, he said, and they got that off virtually through May, but they were taking that off at 16%. Whereas the millet, we were harvesting that in May, and it was fine. I didn't even measure it, didn't even need to measure it. But we were just lucky we had below average rainfall sort of through late April into May, that we actually, I think we only had one rainfall event of 10 mils during harvest, and that didn't affect it at all. So, but yeah, sorghum's the problem of actually getting the damn stuff off. He's actually just put a dryer in, so they're going to keep on trying a bit more sorghum. But yeah, I mean, that's another expense, another issue you've got to contend with. So, you know, we're just trying to look at things that we can manage with what we've got without having to, you know, invest too much in. I mean, unless you could get to a stage, I mean, irrigation's easy because you know you're going to get the return, you'll go and spend the money. But if it's a once-off crop that you don't go and grow again, and you go and spend, excuse me, on something like a dryer, you sort of think, you know, a lot of capital tied up for no return.
The lab that you said was a leaf year?
Yes, yeah, yep. But expensive seed, like its seed was about $90 a hectare, I think. It was very expensive. But we just wanted to put in there to see how it would go.
Just wondered whether it's a cover crop / nitrogen crop, what it would be.
If you're doing that, I think we'd probably use more like something like cowpea, which is a lower cost, and you could put that in with a millet with a cover crop and do that, and then just spray it out, or green manure, or whatever you wanted to do. But I mean, yeah, look, there's plenty of other options. You know, like cowpea was another one we looked at. What was the other one? Oh, like I said, maize. But I mean, sort of the cost of the establishment of maize, and the fact that the water requirement of maize sort of put us off maize. I mean, the two that I want to really try and stick in this year, because I mean, it looks like we're going to have, no matter what happens, we're going to have some country, we'll have to say, the summer crop. I just want to do a couple of strips with some maize, and like I said, even just for the sake of it, I'd love to stick a couple of strips of cotton in, just to see how cotton, because it was cotton down a jewellery last year, and given the cool season, they got it through. I thought that was pretty good. So I mean, not that we're ever going to grow cotton, but I'd just be very interested to see how cotton would actually grow in sort of our southern environment, to see what sort of response we'd get out of it.
No worries. We'll wind it up there.
Yep.
Thanks,
No
David.
worries.
It's fantastic. Yeah, a lot of opportunity there, I think, especially for people in the southern part of the state, particularly. So, a lot of moisture we waste a lot of years, spending summertime out in the sprayers, spraying it.
Well, and that was one of the other things we saw in the trail where we had the probes, is that even that wet February, March, we were still losing the moisture in that chemical fallow a lot quicker than we thought we were.
That's right.
we were spraying it still, but you know the drawdown and that evaporation even under in the